beginnings of the kennel. When we started, I was going to have 2 or 3 dogs, so I built these 4 pens, 2 big ones and the 2 small ones, and it was just. This was an oak tree, big oak tree for shade. Then it dawned on me that we needed something on the floor of the pen, so put some gravel in. And then, as it grew, built the other pens on down and built a shed over it. And after the shed was built, poured the concrete. So it really grew like topsy because it was never supposed to be more than 4 or 5 dogs. Actually, the building, which is pretty sizable, was built by a friend of mine, Homer Smith, who did it all by himself. Drove every nail. It's kind of amazing to me that one person do all that, but he did. This tree, of course, had to be cut down when the roof was put on. And there was a long period of time when this kennel would have 3 to 4 dogs in the big pens, and 2 at least in the smaller ones, bitches and males. And when Joe Harrington, my friend from Plano, let me take Clown and breed him, there were enough dogs in this kennel. Population was so high that Clown's run was this middle part. And this stump, all of the teeth marks were from Clown. He almost ate it down. And actually, it's right about here that he died. I had just bred Tom Smith's bitch, Sweetball, and I was holding him. He was a dog that was tall enough that when I had my hand in his collar, I didn't even have to drop my shoulder. And I had to turn and started putting back up here while my friend and Jack Johnson, who took care of the dogs for so many years, was taking the bitch away. And Clown just got heavy in my hand, and I looked around and he was dead. He just had a massive heart attack. He was one of the great sires. He had the misfortune of having his most, what could have been his most prepotent period taken away from him because of an ailment, and he wouldn't or couldn't breed, and didn't for over 2 years. And he just, he would have nothing to do with the female, really. And Joe asked me if I'd like to bring him up here, and I was hesitant at first because he was Joe's pride and joy, and but he convinced me he wanted to do that. And I called my friend Dr. Sifferman and asked him what we ought to do about artificialing him. And he said, well, you got him in a new environment, why don't you try him first before we get involved in that? And from the first bitch that we bred to him, he bred her, got pups, and we never had another problem with him. And it was all association with a new place. And he contributed a great deal from the few litters that we got from him before he died. This kennel started out, I guess we started with some white knight females. And they were in these pens when it was dirt. And the whole project grew 100-fold more than it was ever supposed to. It was supposed to just be a 3 or 4 dogs or a Criswell trial and have a good time. But started raising them, and I guess it got to be fun, and I had excellent help taking care of them at that time, and it made it easy for me. Teddy Boggs, Johnson, and Jack. Jack for years raised the pups and tended to them better than I might have. He always liked to see them fat. He'd come home and he'd say, boy, don't they look good. They'd be round and rolling. Go over to the area where puppies were whelped in the old house that we built, which was once a feeder, and then we enclosed it and built some cages patterned in rough fashion after those that John Gates had. And some stud dogs that a lot of people remember were housed here. Man's pen was right over there. He got to the point where we had so many females in here in season that he got selective, and he'd pick out the one he wanted to breed, and that might not be the one you wanted him to breed. So we were talking about that, and Tommy Long was working here then, and I said, what are we going to do with him? And he said, well, let's move him over to the other pens where the females aren't around him. And then when he comes over here, he'll cooperate. And it worked 100%. The understatements pen was the one on the far left. And he was always housed with winelets. They lived together all their lives, died in close proximity, and they were a great producing pair. And of course, wine list was Bi-Clown. And out of one of the fanciest females that was ever on the place, who was in turn out of a fancy female that came from Hoyle Eaton's. I always had my theories at the outset were, I suppose, twofold. And one of them was that you had to know or be satisfied in your own mind what the dog's genetic makeup was. Otherwise, you couldn't get much done. If the roadmap was going in another direction, you're probably in deep trouble. So the first thing was to accumulate a set of females that at least I was satisfied were correct. And a good number of them came from Hoyles. Swinging Through came from Hoyles. She was one of the fastest, had no end of bottom. She could run forever. Might not always be in the direction you wanted her to go, but she could do it. Sunday Clothes came from Hoyle. She was a white knight bitch, different temperament than Swinging Through. She didn't run as much. She was very pretty, beautiful on game, and was a good mama. I also got some Redwater Rex bitches from him, and they were excellent producers. My theory was that you used the very best you could get by one of the truly outstanding sires, but also from a female line that was comparable. And it seemed to have worked. I also realized that in raising bird dogs, there were a tremendous number of factors that you wanted to achieve, but you could not breed for all of them. You had to settle for some and hope the others took care of themselves. And I guess a little strange that I chose motor or engine or drive or whatever you want to call it, and like that, and tried to put it into the dogs, and I think pretty successful. Used Flush's Country Squire a good bit, the Paladin dogs over at Gates's. Actually, I never had a lot of success breeding to Paladin Royal Flush, but I had a world of success breeding Flush's Country Squire. And why that is, I can't explain it, but it's the way it worked. The Country Squire is a dog that I should have owned instead of him going to Japan. Mrs. Gates, Maxine, who was a wonderful friend and a great lady, told me that she'd had an offer from the Japs. We were in Quitman at the Continental, and she said, I've had an offer to sell your dog. She always referred to sport as mine. And I said, well, you're not going to sell him, are you? And she said, well, they're not going to pay what I asked. And then I talked to her about it again, and it turned out that they did pay what she asked, and it was a done deal before I found out about it. Otherwise, here. And his record was superb, but I think had he stayed in the United States another 3 or 4 years, it would have been absolutely remarkable. Came along about the time of a rambling rebel, and I don't know exactly their age, but they're very close. They're running about the same time. He didn't have the beauty and grace of a rambling rebel when he was moving. And I realized that my dogs were to a point where they needed a little more style, becoming a popular thing. And in Mr. Gates' day, and actually I haven't changed much on that, the dog pointed above back level, very intense. That was good enough. And frankly, I see that in many and many a trial, that wins, and it will win. With the advent of shooting dog, walking dog trials, dogs with straight up tail, are pretty well required now. And a rambling rebel was the first modern dog that had that something special in style. He and Home Run Jim and all of Fred's dogs. I bred to a rambling rebel twice and got butt bored in one litter, and the other litter was out of a country squire bitch, and every pup in that litter won and won well. Like most litters, they had hard luck. Some of them died early. Roy Giants had an exceptional one out of that litter. The Ames Plantation bought one, and one of the students down there one summer let it out of a pen, and it got too hot and died. So it was kind of a hard luck litter. I wanted a good son of a rambling rebel, and I always loved Dan, Double Rebel Dan. Rucker used to laugh that I said one time, I just love him. He runs off almost every time they turn him loose. And he was an extraordinarily strong dog, hard to finish. But there's no question in my mind that that's the kind of dog you have to breed to maintain strength, drive, desire, because there's a recessiveness to those traits. And when you start off in a weak position, you certainly don't get it back. And Dan, unfortunately, when Fred agreed for me to bring him out here and breed him, was seriously impaired by heartworms. He'd stand that's his pen back there, and he would stand there and cough like a man that 70 years old that smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And, my local veterinarian was very good with the treatment of the time, which was the old arsenic treatment. And he treated Dan and got him cleared up, but he had so much lung damage that he didn't make it all that long. We got few pups, and I guess his being bred to swinging through was the biggest contribution he made to the breed, and it was a very substantial one in that his daughter Swing Along produced Double Rebel Jack, Thunderclap, and Rebel Wrangler. She was a remarkable female. She was a big, liver-headed, all-white bitch who could run all day and would. Very hard to place. The kind of fire and desire that you want, or I always wanted, high energy. Mr. T.R. Miller came in the kennel one time, came out here to judge a field trial, and he was looking through the dogs, and these pens were loaded at the time. I always considered Mr. Miller one of the better breeders and better starters of dogs. And he walked down through there and he picked Swinging Through out immediately. He said, here's the kind of bitch that I would breed. And when she was bred to Double Rebel Dan, she got Swing Along. And the rest of what they've done is pretty much history. After Dan died, I wanted Rebel Hawk. And Fred had not yet quit, and he didn't want to see him go. But we were at a South Carolina seminar, and Fred had had a little bad experience with Hawk. He had been missing some females. But he told me that they had given him some antibiotics, and I suspicion that they had given him an antibiotic that had damaged his sperm, and that would get out of his system and then he'd be all right again. And Fred said, well, you can take him. He said he might not get any pups, but you can take him out there and see about it. And brought him out here. We shipped him the next day or two, and old Bob was as true a breeding dog as has ever been on the place. And a great dog. Bob had a wonderful head. He had those big eyes that just looked at you, and it looked like he could speak to you. He was most attractive. He had a very straight tail. Didn't point always with it directly up, but at least at a level and intensity that would catch your eye. His head was always thrown in the air. In my judgment, if there was ever a Hall of Fame dog based on his production, he's it. And he did have some wins, though he too had heartworms. And I took him to the vet as soon as he got here and started treating him. And I got a letter from Fred the next day or two, and he was saying, well, let's don't, if old Bob has heartworms, let's just let it go and get what we can out of him. Fred must have had a bad experience with the old arsenic treatment, because he was very afraid of it. But Bob cleared up. He didn't have all that damage, and he lived on out his life very productively. He has produced more sons that produce champions than any other male dog. And he was just a wonderfully dispositioned dog to have in a kennel. He was typical of his breeding. Very strong, very stylish, moved with a fluid gait like his dad. Tommy Long tells a story about one day he was working with Joe Odom, who had Bob down, and they had a lot of chain on Bob. And he said Bob came just flying past him, and he hollered. He said, Joe! Said, this dog done lost his chain. He went past Joe, and Joe said, no, he ain't. He said, then I saw it flop in the air. He said he was just had that kind of strength. He was runner-up the Continental was his best win, and probably, as the story goes, that he may have had an even better performance the year before, but that's field trial. His contribution to the breed is a remarkable one. Through him comes the absolutely great Whippoorwill Rebel. He and so many others through Hawks Rex. And Bob was very popular around here. Understatement, lived up in that fire pen, as I said, with wine list, the man there. Clown had his house in here. I guess I'm missing another male dog or so. But I'll probably think of them later. The Fletcher's Country Squire line is still alive through understatement, and his son's Krug was a remarkable bird finder, absolutely remarkable bird finder. He won every derby in Oklahoma, and he was a derby pointing game every time. And a lot of times you go through the season win derby of the year without ever pointing a bird. And he was the only dog in that category to win puppy, derby, and all-age dog of the year. He had some good winners, and he has some brothers here from that remarkable cross of understatement and wine list. The Courier's here, and we have a son of Krug, Satch, is here. The Rebel Hawk line, of course, is Marshu Brute's here. Brute was result of breeding Mortlack, and I'll go to Mortlack. He was raised here, and his dam was one of the more interesting females ever on the place. I raised her by breeding sister Oklahoma flush, Wild Away Royal Ann, to Riggins White Knight. And did that twice. One litter was 13, one litter was 11. And greener pastures. And her first litter was by Double Rebel Dan, and she had Big Sky's Rebel in that litter. Her last litter was just one puppy, and it was Mortlack, and he was a big, fat dog that liver mark, and my friend A.J. Greenwood, who was a barber out of Pensacola and a bird hunter. He was a bird hunter who loved field trials, but and understood a field trial dog. And he could hunt a young dog, and not take anything out of it. If it was the right kind, he'd leave it. Hawk's Nimrod was one of his products. She was a great bitch. A dog called the Nimrod was one of his products. And he would never take over one dog at a time and mess with it that he thought would be field trial product. I tried to get him to take greener pastures when she was a puppy, and he sat out there and watched her half an afternoon and decided he had enough dogs. Then through the years he said, I always regretted that I didn't take that bitch. So when she had this big old liver pup, he said, let me take him. And he did, and had the dog started remarkably, just remarkable. He could do anything with him. He could turn him loose. He was just a big old slab-sided pup. Went down there and he had some penny bird out here, and we lost it. And, he just took the pup off the chuck cord, and he just ran down there and stabbed him. And unfortunately, AJ was in a car wreck just shortly after that, and was killed. So I took the dog to Canada, where he ran literally all over the place. He ran all over more like all summer. Hard to catch. We couldn't do with him what AJ did. And I was his only friend, really. Arlen and Don Hickman weren't too fond of him because they were the ones who had to catch him. And there were two ladies that lived not far from Mortlack who really weren't very fond of him, because one day when he got lost, he went over to her house and got in her fenced-in yard that was filled with turkeys and chickens. And she and her friend spent an hour or two trying to hem him up in there to catch him. When I got home with him, Perry Michaels bought the dog, put him with Andy. And he was not the kind of dog that Andy gets along with very well. And he placed him some, but not a lot. But I had him figured as the kind of dog, both from a genetic background, which I knew, and from the way he went and the way his strength was, I thought he'd be a breeding dog. I bred him early to a big white, bright white bitch with a little orange on her called Alpha Something Special. She was a clown bitch. I had given Raymond Rucker a bitch called Arbitrator, and then we bred her to Clown. And Clown was always one of Raymond's very favorite dogs. And this white puppy I gave to a friend of mine in Mexico, and they ran her down there and named her Alpha Something Special after the boy's kennel. And she won a lot of puppy stakes down there, and he wanted me to take her back, because she wasn't going to get a chance down there. So I bred her to this young dog, Mortlack. And from that mating came a big pup like his sire, liver mark, stout, and he eventually became Varsity Brute. And Bruce's up in the pen now. And according to at least Frank Thompson's statistics, one of the best that there's been, and that's rewarding to know you've raised that sort of dog, and it's from dogs you've selected and bred. And he has I see a lot of Rebel Hawk in him, not necessarily his size. Rebel Hawk wasn't as big a dog. He gets his size more from the Joe Harrington dogs, Clown and his dam. He gets some nearly all white pups, but it's easy to understand because his dam was a white bitch, and Mortlack's dam was white, a little orange on it. However, they got the markings of their sire line, and one of my old unsubstantiated theories is that I like to see a dog mark his pups. I like to see him color-coded, as it were. Both of them were, and they generally do. However, both of them have produced some very like-marked dogs. Well, the kennel was at one time full of dogs. It's pretty well empty now. There's really only one brood bitch that I'm enthused about, and she's the result of some dogs that I bred together with Dale Gummersall, a great guy, and his wife in Colorado. And she's an understatement bitch out of doing my number, who was a daughter of Rebel Hawk, could just literally fly. She was absolutely poetry in motion. She would go further and come back than about any dog I've ever seen. And so I borrowed Dolly. We haven't got a litter out of her yet, but we're going to keep trying. This is Barshoe Bruce. He's an extraordinary dog. Martin Mitchell would be the best sire we've had around or raised. He was whelped over in the whelping house, as was his sire and his sire's dam. His dam was not bred here, but his grand dam was, and her dam. And his head and his eyes are a lot like his grandsire, Rebel Hawk. He has an intelligent head, a smart old man. He was a dog that never really. I was talking about old Bert, as he's called. His head and his intelligence, and reminds me of his grandsire, Rebel Hawk, don't you? Yeah, you almost talk, can't you? Yeah. He and Coda Downs were great buddies. Coda gave him raisins, and the old dog would take them out of the kid's hand, just one raisin at a time. They were great pals. Over here is Satch. He's the country squad. Come here, come back on your butt. He's a Krug son. He's out of a daughter of Barshoe Brute. He's a good dog. He's John Harmon's product. Yeah, you back. This is the outside of the old kennel. I don't really know how long it is, but it's pretty good length. It has good ventilation. Has excellent ventilation. The other side is open. We have to worry more in this country about heat than winters, really. We'll go out here and I'll show you the official trailer. W&W Trailer Company was the first outfit that made a horse trailer that accommodated dogs. And it was a 2-horse trailer with 4 dog boxes under the feed boxes. It was a pull trailer. And they did that because of Star Taylor. Star was their sales manager, and he came up with that idea. We were at Ardmore one time, and goosenecks were coming into some fashion. And he took a napkin and